is the second exploration of the meaning of life from the perspectives of four philosophers. The first three are sampled from the text of Louis P. Bourgeon's Philosophy, the Quest for Truth. Lois Hope Walker believes that religion, specifically theistic religion, gives a meaning to life for its followers. Walker uses a pen name, and is so anonymous. Thomas Nagel is a professor at New York University and has written several books on the nature of mind. Like Albert Camus, he asserts that the meaning of life is that it is absurd, but believes contrarily to Camus that it is a matter of man's advanced consciousness that causes life to be absurd. Bertrand Russell is our last Western viewpoint, living from 1872 to 1970. Russell was the founder of a school of educational philosophy. He was also one of the most influential philosophers of the 20th century, having written multitudes of works covering almost the entire spectrum of philosophical thought. Bertrand Russell held that the key to the meaning of life was to be found in the understanding of suffering. We will also explore what the Buddha might have thought about these meanings of life, or the meaning of life, and these three answers. Walker begins with an anecdote from a time when she herself was an agnostic. She was discussing theism and stated that life would be pleasant indeed if theism were true. It would be as if life had a built-in purpose and meaning, and that it itself would be a gift from a loving, good God. Life would not then be a simple matter of chance and necessity, as Walker believed at that time. An atheist woman overhears this and adds in, "That is the most disgusting thing I've ever heard." Walker then asks why she thinks this. The atheist replies, "Religion keeps humans from growing up. We don't need a big daddy in the sky. We need to grow up and become our own parents." What the atheist woman means, contemplates Walker, is that freedom or autonomy of action is more important than a meaning in life. Also, the atheist perspective must contain that theism may give meaning to life, but at the same time it limits the freedom of human action. Walker postulates that both meaning and autonomy are necessary for a complete life. Autonomy is defined as the ability to self-govern oneself, to make choices based upon their virtues, and not be coerced into decisions based upon threats or forces from outside the self. Meaning is that there is some purpose or rationale. A purpose of this kind may be good, bad, or indifferent, based upon the value set used to judge them. She goes on to state that autonomy must be more valuable than bad, indifferent, and some good purposes, but it doesn't follow rationally that autonomy could be more valuable than every good purpose as well. Autonomy allows one to do some action A when one wishes to reach some goal G. Therefore, autonomy itself relies on meaning to function. Without meaning, autonomy just generates random actions. Meaning is what gives choice and autonomy their perspective. The atheist woman would choose a world of complete autonomy as opposed to some celestial hierarchy. The atheist created a false dilemma for herself by making into what we now see as an unjustified absolute. Walker then concludes that a world of good with a way to completeness is worth the sacrifice of some autonomy. Walker contends that secular society lacks an answer to the paradox of why someone should act morally if it is against their best interests, and that it is inherently patrician as it cannot justify the equality of all humans with unequal abilities and potentials. Under theism, we are all equal as God's children, and moral actions are their own justification. She continues that the guilt built up even over small transgressions is only relieved by the forgiveness within religion, and that this catharsis is unavailable to secularism. Even if theism is incorrect, we can lead fuller, more happy lives and build a better world if we live as if it were true. Thomas Nagel believed that life was absurd and therefore meaningless, but he disagreed with Albert Camus and the old justifications as to why this was so. Whether or not lives are interminably short does not make life absurd by itself, as chains of justification for events are not negated by our mortality. Actions we make now can have effects far beyond our mortal days. Many come to fruition within one's lifetime. Whether or not these mini-systems have meaning does not mean that the whole spectrum of life has no meaning, or has meaning. The old arguments contend mistakenly that all chains of justification that come into an end are incomplete. This means that meaning cannot be given for almost anything one does, such as why one went to the bathroom or went to work promptly every day. Absurdity is the divorce between the reality of a situation, your presupposed notions of the situation, and your goals and actions concerning the situation. When confronted with an absurd situation, one may try to change one's expectations of the situation, change the situation, or one may choose to accept it, to escape it. Life itself is perceived as absurd only when we can see a necessary facet of human existence as absurd, thereby making this absurdity inescapable short of death, if it is to stand as a viewpoint in life. This viewpoint is found when one examines how seriously we take actions within our lives. We ignore our doubts and our beliefs that cannot be reconciled, leading to the conclusion that our seriousness is gratuitous or misplaced. These two ideals clash to create the sense of the absurd, as we continue to take seriously that which we cannot wholly take serious. Only self-reflection allows room for the doubt in our serious endeavors in life, and so Camus is correct that the automatic life cannot show life's absurdity. Nagel points out, we step back to find that the whole system of justification and criticism, which controls our choices and supports our claims to rationality, rests on responses and habits that we never question, and that we should not know how to defend without circularity, and to which we shall continue to adhere even after they are called into question. This is true especially for science, religion, mysticism, and any other belief system or value set. Nagel continues that if we see our actions as arbitrary, we can still observe our reasons and actions objectively, while still being the subject of the outside point of view during self-analysis. This is similar to Camus' belief that the fully conscious state of the fully conscious state of being, and in fact, it is our advanced self-consciousness that allows us to perceive our lives in this way in the first place. It is not, as the old arguments state, that the universe is itself absurd. The absurdity comes from the unique perspective of the human. The universe could be different as to have meaning, but if we were the same, our lives would still remain meaningless. The argument that meaning can be found in our belonging to some greater whole is too of a step. The example given is that if we were a race raised for food for another race, we would have meaning for the other race, but it would not give meaning to ourselves. We might have a meaning as an employee or part of some larger system, but it still does not give us meaning for ourselves. Bertrand Russell once observed a woman in so much intense pain that she was not conscious of the world outside her own agony. This affected him so much that he entered what must be called a visionary state of clarity. From this he divined that the human soul swims in a sea of loneliness, and that all our efforts and actions will be for naught, as the entropy will eventually end everything. All human effort will be swept away with the end of the earth, and eventually with the end of the universe. 3 passions unlock how life can be bearable in this world of evil and suffering. Love can override this loneliness and bridge the gap between people. This web of love in our world is suffering's polar opposite, and by understanding suffering, love can come into sharp focus to the perception. Russell believes that the second passion is that passion for knowledge, but I believe he means knowledge as gnosis, analytical knowledge combined with understanding. The third is pity for the suffering of all people. More than empathy, it is a deep sympathetic connection to the pain of all others. This then directly causes a divine sense of compassion. The Buddha would have agreed with Nagel that our perceptions of this world are ultimately meaningless, and a trap from growing beyond this world of suffering and pain. He would not believe that there is no meaning to life, however. He would agree with Walker that there is a meaning in life, and that moral actions are their own benefit as they aid one's own path. He would also agree that secularism cannot give meaning, and that it and its cousin, materialism, are also traps of this world. He also would have agreed with Russell that suffering is where one must first contemplate in order to find truth. I personally agree in part with all, but think that any philosophy, religion, or point of view of the world that brings the peaceful state described by all philosophies in the meaning of life section is the correct one for the individual that reaches it. Whether it is called enlightenment, conscious living, a state of grace, the sublimation of the negative persona, or even the rending of the veil, If it works as a path to this place for that person, it is the correct one. May we all find our own sonorum bonum, philosopher's stone. May we all find our meanings in life.